The moment I saw the human colony burning, I knew we had made a catastrophic mistake. My name is Vexthar, and I serve as tactical observer aboard the Kalrathi warship Crimson Talon. For 3 cycles, I have documented our species' military campaigns across 14 star systems. I have witnessed the subjugation of the Mallory hive worlds, the pacification of the Drenth resistance, and the complete annexation of the Quillian territories. Every species eventually surrendered. Every species saw reason. Every species understood that resistance against the Kalrathi Dominion was futile. Humans, apparently, did not receive that particular memo. The colony on Pemberton's world was never a military target. At least, that is what Admiral Krethix claimed during the pre-strike briefing. The settlement housed approximately 40,000 civilians, mostly agricultural workers and their families, tucked away on the outer rim of human-controlled space. Strategic value? Minimal. Defensive capabilities? Laughable. It should have been a simple demonstration of power, a gentle reminder, if you will, that the Dominion does not appreciate border disputes. So we dropped 3 antimatter warheads on their primary settlement during morning hour. I watched from the observation deck as the mushroom clouds bloomed across the colony's main valley. Beautiful, in a terrible sort of way. The kind of beauty that makes your stomach twist even as your eyes cannot look away. Communications Officer Thix stood beside me, her forearms folded in what I had learned to recognize as satisfaction. "That will teach them to respect our territorial claims," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of superiority that comes so naturally to our military caste. I said nothing. Something about the way those clouds rose, the way the fires spread, felt wrong, not tactically wrong, morally wrong, though such distinctions rarely matter in war. The human response came exactly 43 hours later. Our fleet was positioned in high orbit around Kal'thor Prime, the Dominion's 3rd most fortified world. We were celebrating, actually. Admiral Krethix had authorized extra rations, and the crew was enjoying what passes for revelry among Kalrathi warriors. I was in my quarters, transcribing the day's events, when the alarms began screaming. "All personnel to battle stations, unidentified vessels entering system perimeter." I rushed to the bridge, my secondary hearts pounding in a rhythm that spoke of ancient prey instincts. The main display showed 6 contacts. No, wait, 12, 20. The sensors kept updating, each refresh revealing more ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. "How many?" Admiral Krethix demanded, his crest flaring red with anger. "Current count stands at 217 vessels, Admiral," the sensor operator reported, her voice remarkably steady given the circumstances. "Composition appears to be primarily human design, frigate class to battleship class. They are maintaining formation at 300,000 kilometers and closing 217 ships. For context, our entire fleet at Kal'thor Prime numbered 38 vessels, and we considered that an overwhelming force. The humans had brought a fleet nearly 6 times our size, to a core world, deep in Dominion territory. Admiral Krethix's mandibles clicked together in what I recognized as barely suppressed panic. "Communications, open a channel, demand their intentions." The response came immediately, which somehow made it worse. No delay, no consultation with superiors. They had been waiting for us to ask. The face that appeared on our main screen belonged to a human female. Dark skin, close-cropped hair starting to grey at the temples, and eyes that held absolutely zero warmth. The nameplate on her uniform read Captain Amara Okonkwo, HTNS Retribution. "This is Captain Amara Okonkwo of the Human Terran Navy, commanding the combined Retribution Fleet," she said, her voice calm, measured, and somehow more terrifying than any war cry. At 0400 hours station time, Kalrathi forces conducted an unprovoked attack on Pemberton's world, a civilian colony protected under the Galactic Convention Accords. Casualty estimates stand at 37,412 dead, mostly women, children, and elderly. Admiral Krethix's crest flattened slightly. "This is Dominion space. You have no authority here. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Captain Okonkwo smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, I am not here to debate jurisdiction. I am here to deliver a message. For every drop of human blood you spilled on Pemberton's world, we will extract payment tenfold. Your fleet will be destroyed. Your orbital stations will be reduced to debris. Your world will burn exactly as ours did. The only variable is how many of your people die in the process." "You cannot be serious," Krethix said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "You are outnumbered in this sector. The 4th and 7th fleets can be here within 2 days. You will be obliterated." 2 days? Captain Okonkwo tilted her head slightly, as if considering this. "Admiral, we will be done with you in 6 hours. As for your reinforcements, well, perhaps you should contact your 4th and 7th fleets." "Oh wait, you cannot, because approximately 20 minutes ago, human strike groups simultaneously engaged both fleets at their staging positions. I believe your 4th fleet is currently dealing with what we call a railgun bombardment. Nasty business that. Relativistic projectiles, very difficult to defend against." The bridge went silent, the kind of silence that precedes either a miracle or a massacre. "You are bluffing," Kal'thor said, but even I could hear the doubt. "Verify it yourself, Admiral." "I will wait." The next 3 minutes were among the longest of my life. Our communications team frantically tried to reach the 4th Fleet, the 7th Fleet, High Command, anyone, nothing. Only static and automated distress beacons. Dozens of distress beacons. Captain Okonkwo waited patiently, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression never changing. "This is a war crime," Kal'thor finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You are targeting civilian populations." The captain's smile vanished. "No, Admiral. What you did was a war crime. What we are doing is justice. There is a difference, and you are about to learn it intimately. You have 30 minutes to evacuate all non-essential personnel from Kal'thor Prime's orbital facilities. We are not monsters. We will allow civilians to reach the surface before we begin. And if we refuse, then their deaths are on your conscience, not ours. 29 minutes, Admiral. I suggest you start now." The screen went dark. What followed was not a battle. Battles imply some degree of contest, some chance of victory for both sides. What happened at Kal'thor Prime was a demonstration, a brutal, efficient, and utterly terrifying demonstration of what humans can do when you murder their children. The Admiral, to his credit, ordered the evacuation. Civilian transports began fleeing the orbital stations, like insects abandoning a dying hive. The human fleet held position, true to their word, weapons powered but not firing. 29 minutes passed in a blur of frantic activity and mounting dread. Then, exactly on schedule, hell arrived in multiple flavors. The human ships moved with a coordination that spoke of decades of tactical development. Their formation split into 7 distinct groups, each targeting specific elements of our defense grid. Long-range missile frigates opened up first, their weapons streaking across the void in waves of precisely calculated destruction. Our point defense systems managed to intercept perhaps 1 in every 20 missiles. The rest slammed into shield generators, communication, arrays, and weapon platforms. "Return fire," Kal'thor ordered, his crest now fully flattened in terror. "All vessels, return fire." We tried. By all the stars, we tried. Our plasma cannons lit up the void. Our torpedo bays launched everything we had. Some shots even connected. I watched a human destroyer take a direct hit from our flagship's main battery, saw its shield collapse and its hull breach. It kept coming anyway, venting atmosphere and debris, weapons still firing, refusing to die until it had launched every last missile in its magazines. Then, and only then, did it begin a controlled retreat back to the fleet's medical frigates. "They are insane," Thix whispered beside me. "Their ship is crippled and they continue attacking?" I was beginning to understand something that our military strategists had somehow missed. Humans do not fight like we do. We fight until victory seems impossible, then we negotiate. Humans fight until they win or everyone is dead, preferably both. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. By the end, 38 Kalrathi warships had been reduced to 17. Our orbital defense grid was gone. 8 civilian transports had been caught in the crossfire despite evacuation efforts, their destruction adding another 4,000 souls to the day's grim tally. The human fleet lost 6 ships destroyed and 15 badly damaged. They considered it an acceptable exchange rate. Captain Okonkwo's face reappeared on our screens. Behind her, I could see damage control teams working frantically, see the emergency lighting that indicated her flagship had taken significant hits. But her expression remained calm, almost serene. "Admiral Kal'thor, your fleet is broken. Surrender now, and I give you my word that your surviving crew will be treated according to the Galactic Convention. Refuse, and we will bombard your world until nothing remains but ash and regret." The Admiral looked around his shattered bridge, at the crew members nursing wounds, at the damage reports scrolling endlessly across dying screens. His crest had gone completely grey. "We surrender," he said quietly. "In the name of mercy, we surrender." "Mercy?" Captain Okonkwo's voice dropped several degrees. "Admiral, mercy was what the families on Pemberton's world begged for as your warheads fell. Mercy was what the children in the schools cried out for in their final moments. You had your chance for mercy. You chose annihilation instead. What you are receiving now is not mercy, it is restraint. Be grateful we understand the difference." She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. "However, I am not a butcher. Your surviving ships will proceed to the following coordinates and power down all weapons and engines. Any deviation will be considered an act of continued hostility and dealt with accordingly. Your ground forces on Kal'thor Prime are to withdraw to designated zones. Human occupation forces will arrive within 12 hours to ensure compliance with surrender terms." "Occupation?" Krethix's crest flickered with brief indignation. "This is a sovereign Dominion world." "Was," Captain Okonkwo corrected. "It was a sovereign Dominion world. Now, it is a human protectorate, at least until reparations are paid for the massacre at Pemberton's world. We calculate that will take approximately 47 years, given current Dominion economic output. Unless, of course, your government would prefer to negotiate alternative terms. I am certain my superiors would be delighted to discuss your options." The implications hit me like a physical blow. The humans were not just retaliating, they were conquering, taking territory, holding it hostage until their demands were met. This was not a punitive expedition. This was the opening move in a war that the Dominion was catastrophically unprepared to fight. "One more thing, Admiral," Captain Okonkwo added, almost as an afterthought. "The officer who ordered the strike on Pemberton's world. I want their name, rank, and current location. You have 6 hours to provide this information. For every hour of delay, we will select one of your orbital facilities and reduce it to its component atoms. Choose wisely." The screen went dark again. Admiral Krethix turned to look at me, his eyes holding a question I did not want to answer. "Observer Vexthar," he said slowly, "in all your cycles of documenting our campaigns, have you ever seen anything like this?" I thought about the Malori, who surrendered after we destroyed a single outpost. I thought about the Drenth, who negotiated peace after 3 minor skirmishes. I thought about the Quillians, who simply accepted annexation rather than face actual combat. "No, Admiral," I said honestly, "I have never seen anything remotely like this. What manner of species responds to a border provocation with total war?" I looked at the tactical display, showing the human fleet maintaining perfect formation around our battered survivors, every weapon system locked and ready, discipline absolute. I thought about that crippled destroyer continuing to fight even as it died. I thought about Captain Okonkwo's cold promise of tenfold retribution. "A species that remembers," I said quietly. "A species that has fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. A species that has learned, through bitter experience, that the only way to truly end a conflict is to make the cost of starting it utterly unbearable." Thix made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been despair. "We bombed their colony to teach them a lesson about respecting our borders." "Yes," I agreed. "And now they are teaching us a far more important lesson. One I suspect the Dominion will spend the next several cycles learning thoroughly." "What lesson is that?" I watched the human ships on the display, watched their patient, predatory positioning, and felt something I had never experienced. In all my years documenting Kalrathi victories. Fear. That humanity protects its own, I said, and that anyone foolish enough to harm them will pay a price measured not in territory or resources, but in blood and ashes and nightmares that will echo through generations. Admiral Krethix was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened, his crest attempting to return to something resembling proper military bearing. "Send the information Captain Okonkwo requested," he ordered quietly, "and draft a message to High Command. Tell them everything. Tell them we have awakened something that should have been left sleeping. Tell them that the humans are not like the other species we have conquered." "What are they like, sir?" the communications officer asked. The Admiral looked at the tactical display one more time, at the overwhelming force that had materialized from nowhere, at the cold efficiency of their assault, at the calculated brutality of their retribution. "They are worse," he said simply. "They are us, but angrier, and with far better weapons." As I watched the human fleet continue their vigil over our defeated forces, I realized that Admiral Krethix was wrong about one crucial detail. The humans were not worse than us. They were better at war, better at strategy, better at making their enemies regret ever raising a weapon against them. And that, more than anything else, was what terrified me most. The interrogation chamber on the human vessel was surprisingly ordinary. No torture devices, no ominous lighting, just a simple grey room with a table, 3 chairs, and a recording device blinking quietly in the corner. I sat across from Captain Okonkwo and a younger human male whose uniform identified him as Commander Marcus Tola, Strategic Intelligence Division. They had requested my presence specifically, not demanded, requested, which somehow felt more unsettling than being dragged here at gunpoint. Observer Vexthar, Captain Okonkwo, began, sliding a data tablet across the table. Your records indicate you have documented 17 Kalrathi military campaigns over the past 8 years. Is that accurate? I glanced at the tablet, recognizing my own reports displayed on the screen. Yes, Captain. It is my function to maintain historical accuracy for the Dominion's military archives. Historical accuracy, Commander Tola repeated, his tone suggesting he found the phrase amusing. So when your people wiped out the Mallory colony on Threshold Station, killing 12,000 civilians, you documented that accurately? My secondary heart skipped a rhythm. That was classified as a strategic necessity. The Mallory leadership refused to acknowledge Dominion territorial supremacy. They refused to surrender their homeworld after knowing your species for exactly 6 weeks. Okonkwo said flatly, "So you murdered 12,000 people to make a point? How very strategic." I had no response to that. Looking back through human eyes, our actions seemed less like military necessity and more like systematic butchery. But acknowledging that meant acknowledging complicity, and I was not quite ready for that level of self-examination. "Why am I here?" I asked instead. "I am merely an observer. I hold no command authority." "You are here because you keep records," Tola said, leaning forward. "Records we need. Every campaign, every battle, every atrocity your people committed while you watched and took notes. We need those files, Vexthar. All of them. Those records are property of the Dominion High Command." "The Dominion High Command no longer exists in any meaningful capacity," Okonkwo said calmly. "Approximately 9 hours ago, human strike teams captured or eliminated 73% of your senior leadership. The remaining 27% have either surrendered or gone into hiding. Your government is effectively decapitated, which means those records now belong to whoever is writing the next chapter of galactic history." The room seemed to tilt slightly. 9 hours? But that is impossible. High Command is protected by layered defense grids, personal security forces, contingency protocols, all of which assume your enemy plays by your rules, Tola interjected. "We do not. While your fleets were busy trying to reinforce core worlds, our special operations teams were already inside your command structures. Turns out your security protocols are embarrassingly vulnerable to social engineering and old-fashioned bribery. Half your senior staff have financial problems. The other half have vices. We exploited both. I felt my respiratory spiracles constrict. This was not how wars were supposed to function. You fought fleet actions, captured territory, negotiated terms. You did not simply decapitate an entire government in less than a standard day." "You are monsters," I whispered. Captain Okonkwo's expression did not change. "No, Vexthar. Monsters bomb civilian colonies and then go back to their ships for celebratory drinks. We are simply very, very good at ending wars before they consume entire sectors. Now, those records. Will you provide them voluntarily, or do we need to extract them from your ship's databases without your cooperation?" I considered my options. Refuse and maintain some shred of loyalty to a government that had just collapsed. Cooperate and possibly prevent further bloodshed. Neither choice felt satisfactory. "If I provide these records, what happens to my people? To the Dominion?" "That depends entirely on what those records contain," Okonkwo said. "If they show a pattern of systematic war crimes, your people will face justice. International tribunals, reparations, probable restructuring of your entire government. If they show isolated incidents of overzealous commanders acting beyond their authority, the penalties will be less severe. Either way, the Dominion as you knew it is finished. What replaces it is partially up to people like you." Commander Toller pulled up a holographic display showing star charts. Red markers indicated Dominion-controlled systems. As I watched, they began turning blue, one after another, like lights being extinguished across a vast network. These are systems where Dominion forces have surrendered or withdrawn in the past 12 hours, he explained. Notice the pattern? Your military is collapsing not because we destroyed it, but because it finally understands what it is facing. Species you conquered are already declaring independence. Trade routes are in chaos. Your economy is about to experience what humans call a death spiral. And you think I can prevent this? No, Okonkwo said bluntly. This is already done. But you can help determine whether the transition is relatively peaceful or whether it drowns entire worlds in blood. Your records will show us which of your military leaders were following orders and which were enthusiastic participants in atrocities. That information will shape how we proceed. I looked at the data tablet still sitting on the table between us. 8 years of meticulous documentation, 8 years of watching my people spread across the stars like a plague, subjugating anyone too weak to resist. I had told myself it was necessary, that someone needed to maintain accurate histories, that recording events was not the same as endorsing them. But Captain Okonkwo was correct. I had watched. I had documented. I had done nothing to stop it. If I cooperate, I want something in return, I said slowly. You are not exactly in a position to negotiate, Toller pointed out. Nevertheless, I want guaranteed safety for the civilian populations on the 17 worlds I documented. Many of those systems have non-Kalrathi species who were conquered by the Dominion. If your forces move in, I want assurances they will not face retribution for their government's actions. Okonkwo and Toller exchanged glances. Some wordless communication passed between them. Acceptable, the captain finally said. We are not interested in punishing civilians for their leaders' mistakes. We are interested in justice, not revenge, despite what you might think. There is a difference? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Yes, she said firmly. Revenge is what we would have done if we simply glassed every Dominion world we could reach. Justice is making sure the people responsible for Pemberton's world face consequences while protecting those who had no say in the decision. Revenge is easy. Justice requires work. We chose work. I picked up the tablet and began entering my access codes. The primary archives are stored on the Crimson Talon's main database. I can provide remote access credentials, but I want to make something clear, Captain. What is that? The files will show that many Kalrathi military personnel genuinely believed they were bringing order to chaotic sectors. They were taught that conquest equals stability, that subjugation prevents larger conflicts. They are not all monsters. Some of them are simply soldiers following what they were told was the right path. Noted, Okonkwo said, though I suspect the families on Pemberton's world would have a different perspective on whether good intentions matter when the bombs start falling. She had a point, a devastatingly accurate point. The data transfer took approximately 40 minutes. During that time, Commander Toller asked me detailed questions about specific campaigns, particular commanders, strategic decisions that seemed questionable even by Dominion standards. I answered as honestly as I could, watching my entire career as a military observer collapse into evidence for war crimes tribunals. When it was done, Captain Okonkwo stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. I stared at it for a moment before accepting, my clawed appendage awkward against her smaller fingers. Thank you for your cooperation, Observer Vexthar, she said formally. You will be transported to a neutral station where representatives from the Galactic Council will determine your status. Given your cooperation, I will personally recommend leniency in your case. And my crew, the survivors from the Crimson Talon, will be treated according to the conventions of war. Medical care for the wounded, reasonable accommodation for prisoners, eventual repatriation when circumstances allow. We are not barbarians, despite what your propaganda might have suggested. I was escorted back to a detention area where other Kalrathi officers were being held. The conditions were, as promised, adequate. Clean cells, regular meals, medical attention for those who needed it. But the atmosphere was thick with despair. Admiral Krethix sat in the corner of the communal area, his crest completely grey now, his eyes distant. When he saw me, he gestured for me to approach. They got everything, did they not? He asked quietly. Yes, Admiral. Every file, every report, every documented action over 8 years. He made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been sobbing. Do you know what the worst part is, Vexthar? The absolute worst part of this entire catastrophe? What, sir? We brought this on ourselves. Every single consequence, every ship destroyed, every world occupied, every officer facing trial, we did this. We looked at a civilian colony and decided it was an acceptable target. We started this war thinking humans would respond like every other species we had encountered. We were wrong, and now we are paying the price. Do you think they will execute you, Admiral? He shrugged, a gesture he must have learned from observing humans. Probably. I ordered the strike on Pemberton's world, after all. That makes me directly responsible for 37,000 deaths. Even if I was following strategic doctrine, even if High Command approved the target, I am the one who gave the final order. Justice demands accountability. You could claim you were following orders. I could, he agreed, but I would be lying. I wanted to bomb that colony. I thought it would send a message, establish dominance, make the humans think twice about border disputes. I was enthusiastic about it. So no, Vexthar, I will not hide behind orders. I will accept responsibility for what I did. Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the detention area. Human guards rushed past our cells, weapons ready, heading toward some unseen emergency. Through the transparent barriers, I could see other prisoners reacting with confusion and hope. Then Captain Okonkwo's voice came over the public address system. Attention all personnel, we have detected multiple Kalrathi warships approaching this position. Estimated time to weapons range is 14 minutes. All non-essential crew to emergency stations. Defensive systems powering up now. My heart sank. Some faction of the Dominion military, probably hardliners who refused to accept surrender, had decided to mount a rescue operation, or more likely, they wanted to eliminate the human fleet while it was occupied with prisoner management. Either way, we were about to be caught in the middle of another battle. Admiral Krethix stood slowly, his crest briefly flickering with color. Well, perhaps I will not need to face trial after all. The guards returned, began herding us toward interior compartments away from the hull. Standard procedure during combat. We were ushered into a reinforced cargo bay, approximately 200 Kalrathi prisoners crowded together, while human marines maintained watch from elevated positions. The battle began 7 minutes later. Even deep inside the ship, we could feel the impacts. Hear the muffled explosions, feel the vibrations through the deck plates, sense the vessel maneuvering violently to avoid incoming fire. Emergency lighting flickered on and off. Someone prayed to the ancestral spirits in a corner, their voice rising and falling with each new shudder. Then, silence, sudden and complete. We waited. Minutes passed. Then, an hour. Finally, Captain Okonkwo herself entered the cargo bay, her uniform scorched in places, a medical bandage visible on her left arm. The attack has been repelled, she announced. 17 Kalrathi warships attempted to engage our fleet. 12 were destroyed, 5 retreated. We sustained moderate damage and are conducting repairs now. Who ordered the attack? Admiral Krethix called out. Okonkwo's expression was grim. According to intercepted communications, it was Admiral Vrix of the 6th Fleet. Apparently, he disagreed with High Command's decision to surrender and decided to take matters into his own hands. His flagship was among the vessels destroyed. How many casualties? I asked. Human or Kalrathi? Both. 83 humans dead, 209 wounded. Approximately 4,000 Kalrathi dead across the destroyed vessels. A pointless waste of life to satisfy one individual's pride. The cargo bay fell silent. 4,000 more deaths. 4,000 soldiers who followed orders from a commander too stubborn or too stupid to recognize when the war was already lost. Captain Okonkwo surveyed the assembled prisoners. I am sharing this information with you for a reason. In approximately 6 hours, representatives from the Galactic Council will arrive to begin formal peace negotiations. Your species will need to decide whether to accept the terms offered or continue this war. Based on what happened today, I suspect there are still elements within the Dominion leadership who believe continued resistance is viable. She paused, making sure everyone was listening. Let me be absolutely clear. It is not. The human fleets currently occupy or control 42 Dominion worlds. Our forces have neutralized 67% of your remaining military assets. Your economy is collapsing, your government is in shambles, and your people are exhausted. If fighting continues, within 3 months the Dominion will cease to exist as anything more than a historical footnote. So we are to surrender completely? someone shouted from the back. Accept humiliation and subjugation? No, Okonkwo said firmly. You are to accept responsibility and reform. The terms being offered include reparations, yes. War crimes trials, yes. Temporary occupation of strategic locations, yes. But also paths to eventual self-governance, economic reconstruction assistance, and integration into the galactic community as equals rather than conquerors. The choice is between difficult rehabilitation or complete annihilation. I know which I would choose. Admiral Krethix stepped forward. Captain, if I may ask, what will happen to Pemberton's world, to the survivors there? The colony is being rebuilt. Human Engineering Corps arrived 3 days ago and began clearing debris. Temporary housing is being erected. Medical facilities are operational. Within a year, it will be restored. Within 5 years, it will be larger than before. We rebuild what we lose, Admiral. It is what we do. And the dead? The 37,000? Okonkwo's expression softened slightly. Will be remembered. There is a memorial being constructed. Every name, every life, every story. Because that is also what we do. We remember, and we make damn sure that anyone considering future attacks understands exactly what they are provoking. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. One final thing. Several of you will be released over the next few days, cleared of involvement in war crimes. When you return to Dominion space, I want you to carry a message. Tell your people that humanity does not want enemies. We want neighbors, trading partners, allies. But if forced to choose between being liked and being feared, we will choose fear every single time, because fear keeps our children safe. And after Pemberton's world, that is all we truly care about. The door sealed behind her, leaving us alone with our thoughts and our dwindling options. 3 days later, I was among the first group released. True to her word, Captain Okonkwo had advocated for my case, arguing that documentation of war crimes was not equivalent to participation in them. The Galactic Council representatives agreed, placing me under probationary status with requirements to testify at future tribunals. As I prepared to board the transport that would take me to a neutral station, Commander Toller approached with a final message. Observer Vexthar, Captain Okonkwo wanted me to give you this. He handed me a data chip. It contains a complete record of human military history, wars we fought among ourselves, atrocities we committed, mistakes we made, lessons we learned. She thought you might find it educational. Why would she share this? Because she wants you to understand. Humans are not inherently better or more moral than Kalrathi. We are simply further along the path. We learned these lessons the hard way, over thousands of years of butchering each other. Now we are trying to spare the rest of the galaxy from having to learn them the same way. But if teaching does not work, demonstration will. Pemberton's world was your species' classroom. Pass or fail, that is up to you. I took the chip and boarded the transport. 6 months later, I watched from a neutral station as the Treaty of New Geneva was signed, officially ending hostilities between humanity and the Kalrathi Dominion. The terms were harsh but survivable. Reparations, trials, oversight, reforms, but also pathways to redemption. Admiral Krethix was executed for war crimes, along with 43 other senior commanders. Hundreds more received prison sentences of varying lengths. The Dominion itself was restructured, its territory reduced, its military limited, its government reformed. And, through it all, humanity maintained their occupation forces, not as conquerors but as peacekeepers, making sure the transition happened, making sure violence did not erupt in the power vacuum, making sure species subjugated by the Dominion received justice and autonomy. I spent those months reviewing the data chip Commander Toller had given me, reading about human wars, their world wars, their civil conflicts, their colonial atrocities, their eventual recognition that conquest only breeds more violence. They had walked the path we were now being forced down. They understood what it meant to be humbled, reformed, rebuilt. One entry particularly struck me, a human philosopher named Santayana, who wrote that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Kalrathi Dominion had forgotten its own past. The time before we became conquerors, we had convinced ourselves that expansion was destiny, that subjugation was order. We had repeated the mistakes of 1,000 extinct empires because we believed ourselves exceptional. Humanity taught us otherwise, brutally, efficiently, and permanently. Now I document a different kind of history, not campaigns and conquests, but reconstruction and reconciliation. I travel between worlds once held by the Dominion, recording how they rebuild, how they forgive or fail to forgive, how they move forward from trauma. And whenever I encounter young Kalrathi officers, their crests bright with ambition and thoughts of future glory, I tell them about Pemberton's world, about the price of underestimating humanity, about the cost of treating civilian lives as acceptable losses. Some listen, some do not, but they all learn eventually, because humanity made sure the lesson would not be forgotten. Every memorial on Pemberton's world carries the same inscription, in 17 languages including Kalrathi. I have seen it myself, carved into black stone beneath 37,000 names. They were our children. We will never forget. And we will never allow this to happen again. That is humanity's promise, not to their allies, not to their enemies, but to themselves. And after everything I have witnessed, I believe them.